Hello and welcome to the Facts Matters podcast. I'm Guy Gordon, coming to you from the Citizens Research Council of Michigan, where we are unabashedly unbiased, passionately nonpartisan, and dedicated to the proposition that facts should be driving policy, not politics. It is the dawn of a new day in Detroit with a new mayor, a new team, but facing to some degree the same fiscal challenges that previous administrations have. We want to take a look today at the February Detroit Revenue Estimating Conference, basically telling us how much money is in the kitty as this new team moves forward with its first budget. Joining us, the president of the Citizens Research Council, Eric Lupher. Eric, hello.
Good morning.
And for the first time, Douglas Ortiz, the Detroit director of the CRC, who generated this report for us. Douglas, hello to you.
Thanks for having me.
So the top line on this, at least in some of the newspapers, was a $40 million overall tax revenue bump in the new fiscal year. But let's take a look at that from a general fund standpoint, which drives most of the spending. Where are we, Douglas?
Well, what we've seen from that forecast was that revenues were largely flat as compared to this conference that they had last September.
But there was a marginal increase. What was driving that?
That was largely wagering taxes or casino taxes from the three major Detroit casinos. It was about a $4.5 million increase from the last conference, and mostly driven by internet gaming and sports betting.
And just in historical terms, I mean, if we looked at that, okay, this is a good thing. We have this increase in revenues estimated. How reliable is that? How volatile are wagering tax revenues?
It's been volatile in the past couple of years because there's been an expansion of the gambling industry, more, just gambling options available to Michiganders. We also had the launch of internet gaming and sports betting online. So all of that has created, pretty volatile, fluctuating wagering tax revenue for the city of Detroit. And this forecast that the city is projecting assumes that volatility is going to stabilize and not really continue in the next 4 fiscal years for the city.
Okay, so we can't rely on it in the out years. When you look at this, we have absolute budget revenue increases, and we have real revenue increases when adjusted for inflation. Where are we in terms of the real increase on a percentage basis?
Well, when we adjusted for inflation, only out of the 3 major revenues that Detroit has, which is the property tax revenue, income taxes, and the wagering taxes, only property taxes had greater than flat annual growth in the forecast when adjusted for inflation.
Right, which is about, and especially in the out years, it looks like it's going to be about a 4% gain. Which will, we don't know where that inflation rate will be. We know it's been slowly coming down, but that's certainly healthier than what we have seen, and would be a nice indicator. We've looked at the revenue estimates for 2026. Let's look at the out years, 27 and beyond. What do we see in the forecast in terms of revenue for that? Maybe absent the wagering revenues, which we've already said are pretty much going to be flat.
In that regard, income and property taxes are what are leading the forecast for the next 4 fiscal years. But when we adjusted those 2 revenue sources by inflation, really only property taxes had greater than flat annual growth.
Eric, from a historical perspective, there's going to be a big spotlight on Mayor Sheffield. Questions about whether she will, with a new administration, have the same fiscal restraint as Mike Duggan did coming out of bankruptcy. In terms of the momentum that we had coming out of, say, 2020 after the COVID dip, are these growth estimates in line with sustaining that momentum, or are things flattening out a bit?
Yeah, there's a couple things to say about that. So we can look at pre-bankruptcy, and part of the problem was we didn't have a process like this. So the mayors, the city councils could grab numbers, and sometimes you would estimate revenue growth to meet your spending needs, even if they weren't realistic. It's raining all around you, but you're walking out without a coat or hat or anything like that. You just live in your own little world, and then you get out there and you find out it's raining, and revenues don't meet projections, and you run a deficit, and that got in trouble. So the good news is, coming out of bankruptcy, they put this process in place. Uh, we can look over the last 10 years since bankruptcy, and the revenue estimating conference has generally projected rather conservative estimates. On the one hand, that's a healthy way to approach
Hmm.
it. You don't want to bankrupt a formerly bankrupt city. Let's go crazy and overestimate revenues and run up deficits again and get right back into the hot soup that they just cleaned up from you. On the other hand, um, you want the revenue projections to reflect our sense of what reality is going to look like as much as possible, so that the resources being brought in are used as efficiently as possible. These are paying for police and fire and park cleanup and uh, garbage collection and everything else that goes on. So not using them for those purposes, but ending up with a reserve ends up in some sort of a slush fund that is meeting needs, somebody's needs, and you have to have city council sign off on that. But arguably, one more police officer or one more firefighter, one more dollar going into economic development would be very helpful in those circumstances.
I was going to say, so can we say, based upon this REC, as an incoming new mayor, is Mary Sheffield's road going to be bumpier, or about what previous administrations have faced over the past 12 years? Post
Well,
bankruptcy, I should
you
say.
know, Mayor Duggan, he did a great job. He surrounded himself with a great team, but the reality is there was years of economic growth. The city shed itself of some of the state oversight because it met the needs for balanced budgets and finishing in the black. Um, it's fun to sail when the winds are with you.
Hmm.
Mayor Sheffield has started surrounding herself with good people as well, but there are some signs that the winds are shifting, and there might be some more difficulty. The city is very dependent on income tax revenue, and income taxes and sales taxes are the first to show signs of economic slowdowns. So we have high confidence that they're going to do their best to manage the budget,
Right.
but the economy might create some challenges.
And we should point out that in Doug's report, and for those of you that want to see it, you can find it at crcmich.org. Scroll to the bottom of the page, and you'll see that it's our most recent update. The average annual percent change for revenue stretched out through 2030 is 2.93%. So almost 1 point above inflation, which is not a bad thing. Property taxes look even better, 4.11%. Again, these are numbers that are not adjusted for inflation, but if we take the CPI, which has hovered around 2.7 to 2.9 recently, those are pretty solid numbers going forward. Some other data points that they pointed out in the city's press release, gentlemen. We come out of fiscal year 25 with a $15 million budget surplus. That may not sound like much, but they were forecasting a $55 million deficit, correct?
They were, but again, working with conservative revenue estimates. So they also recently, the assessor's reports and looking at growth of assessed values and growth of taxable values. So we see healthy property tax revenues, which is a good thing, signs of continued recovery for the city. The city continues to struggle with getting workers. People are still enjoying 3 days in the office and 2 days working from home, or arrangements like that is good for them, but doesn't help the city's income tax revenue, things like that. So yeah, definitely a good sign that they're finishing in the black, and revenues flowing in.
Two other data points that bear repeating from the city's release of their report. One about the wage gap between Detroit residents and the statewide average. It has been quite high in the past. It is narrowing even further with this report. Also, the jobless rate gap between the city and the state. It used to be as high as 12 percentage points back in 2010. That's been now reduced to 3.3%. So it's no longer the case of when the state gets a cold, Detroit gets pneumonia. Maybe it just gets a cold that's slightly worse. Both encouraging signs about how Detroit residents are coming up in the economic sphere.
Right. So the issue of the wage growth, the depopulation of the city was largely reflected with a loss of the middle class. And I think what we're seeing with the new growth of new housing units, with people coming in and rehabbing housing units, there's a bit of that. The middle class in Detroit is being reborn, and that's reflected in the wage growth. The employment numbers are also very encouraging. We know from the past, there was a bit of a black market and a gray market with people being paid that weren't always showing up in the numbers.
Right.
But now we see them in the numbers, and more people, more and more Detroiters gainfully employed, and those wages are showing up. The employment numbers are showing up. So yeah, definitely good signs for the city of Detroit that these key economic indicators, things that we want to look for to show the continued rebirth of the city, the renaissance, is on the right track.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from the two of you? Douglas?
Well, there's marginally more revenue for the upcoming Sheffield budget for FY27. It's driven by wagering and casino taxes, but the mayor is going to have to work within their resources. There's not more revenue in in the city coffers.
Yeah,
So.
It's not getting any easier. And Eric?
Yeah, I just sort of an intercity perspective here, that Detroit is like many cities, many counties, many townships in Michigan, as they're putting their budgets together, many of them starting a July fiscal year. Revenues are tight. The property tax limitations, revenue sharing's been pulled back as the state's adjusted its budget. So some of the cities with income tax revenue dealing with the same sorts of issues, workers working from home and other issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good sign that we're hearing about some tax reform up in Lansing, and I think a lot of local governments are hopefully watching that this is a positive sign that can help continue to pay their workers, make the pension payments, do the things they need to do to create quality of life in their communities.
Yeah. Well, the administration knows at least how much money is in the pot as they begin the process of formulating their first budget. Gentlemen, we thank you for joining us on the Facts Matter podcast.
Always good to be here.
All right. And Douglas, thank you for your first round. Great job. We want to remind you that if you appreciate the work of the Citizens Research Council of Michigan and the Facts Matter approach that we have to analyzing and looking at both state and local issues, you can support us because we do not get any special interest money. We do not get any funding from the government. You can support us by going to crcmich.org and maybe throwing a few shekels in our kitty. Until next time, I'm Guy Gordon for the Citizens Research Council of Michigan. Thanks for joining us.
The Citizens Research Council of Michigan has been providing lawmakers, academics, the media, philanthropists, business leaders, voters, and all Michiganders with factual, unbiased, independent information on significant issues concerning state and local government organization and finance for over a century. Our research is available to you. Go online at crcmich.org and on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and download our research. Check out our numerous papers and blogs and listen to our podcasts. And while you're there, please consider supporting our research with a donation. This has been a Facts Matter podcast, a presentation of the Citizens Research Council of Michigan.